Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, motivate and educate others to make the world a better place. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the fabulous Martin Pong. Now, Martin, whom I've known actually for, I think it's about a year and a half since speaking with him on one of the diversity and inclusion panels at a conference, Martin has made some absolute strides as one of the few LGBTQ plus East Asian advocates in the UK. He's recognised by the Financial Times as one of the top 10 global future leaders for representing and championing representation for East Asian and South LGBTQ plus experiences. He talks very, very openly about his experiences growing up as gay and Chinese to raise awareness of the often overlooked LGBTQ plus community. Martin is also the global chair of the LGBTQ plus network and has worked with the UN and the HRC on global corporate initiatives. He also actively supports LGBTQ plus charities such as Stonewall's diversity and inclusion role models in empowering and mentoring ethnic minority LGBTQ plus youth. Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And, you know, I've been dying to speak with you because it's been a whole year and a half since we actually last spoke. And, you know, you were fantastic on the Millennial panel with the fantastic Clive Myrie speaking. And actually listening to your story really inspired me. And I thought it would be fantastic to have you here on the podcast, sharing some of your experiences with our community and with a number of our listeners who are tuning in today. Just so we can kind of get up to speed with everything that you're doing right now, tell us about some of the projects that you're involved in right now and some of the things that you're championing within the business.
So I guess aside from the general LGBT work and BAME work that I'm doing within work, I'm currently working on an initiative to raise awareness of East and Southeast Asian identities in the UK. So I think in the UK, East and Southeast Asians make up the third largest ethnic grouping in Britain. And right now we have very little representation in the media. We're not very vocal in the debates. Very few people understand the experience that we have in the UK. And so I'm working on this little project here to really bring together some of this influential voices from our community to hopefully give a better representation of our lives in the UK, trying to move away from the stereotype that we're shy and obedient, this model minority stereotype, and really reflect these authentic experiences that we're having. And I think, especially in the US with the success of Crazy Rich Asians, it only makes sense that the discussion should expand over to the UK. So yeah, I'm really excited about this initiative. And if anyone out there wants to support me on this, then please feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Well, I'd definitely be up for supporting you on that initiative. And, you know, everything you said there is completely true. You know, I think, Asian, Chinese communities, I think I actually read one of your posts on Twitter and you said growing up, really the only individual out there who had any kind of resemblance to myself was Gok Wan. And I thought about that and I thought, oh my God, did you know it's exactly the same for me? That there is a massive lack of individuals out there who are Chinese, Far Eastern, Oriental. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it is probably a cultural thing. I think within our communities, going into media, acting, things, vocations like that, we're not necessarily encouraged. We were more I think within the community, we're much more encouraged to strive to be doctors and lawyers and things like that. So I think there's a lag in the sense that the like a generational lag, but hopefully in the future we'll start seeing, especially those in the next generation, starting to engage a bit more with the arts, with media, and really putting themselves in the limelight. So fingers crossed for the future.
Absolutely. And you know, I feel really strongly that our generation, and of course we were speaking on the millennial panel, I really feel that there is a huge surge towards, not only because of social media and digital and the fact that actually it's far easier technically to get voices out there, but also, you know, it seems to me that our generation is very focused on purpose-led leadership and initiatives, and actually putting that purpose a lot of the time before profit. Why is it important, you know? But I mean, just going back to you know, some of your earlier life, if you don't mind me kind of digging a little deeper, you know, I'm really curious to find out about your story and how you came to be where you are today. You know, of course, you know, I know a number of other Chinese individuals, both friends and in business, who are you know, up in the Northwest, because obviously we're both based up in the Northwest. But you know, tell me kind of how did your family come to be here, and you know, tell me a little bit about your experience, you know, growing up. You know, the well, I say the young Martin, but you are young right now, but the even younger Martin. Tell me a little about your unique story.
So my parents came over from Hong Kong, each of them, to study at university. They both came to Manchester, and as you know, Manchester has quite a relatively large Chinese community, and that was when they met, and then they had me, and that was when I guess I was like the son of two immigrant parents, growing up looking Chinese, but in a very like in Manchester, where it was predominantly white, and I remember just like I learned Cantonese very very early on as my like first language, and my parents were speaking it to me when I was a little child. But obviously, when I got sent to English speaking school, I started having to speak to my friends and my peers in English, and that's when I almost my Cantonese suffered in a way, and I guess it was something I saw, like Cantonese was a language I spoke at home. It wasn't something that really applied in the outside world, or this predominantly white world that I was interacting with. And I think very early on I did see this sort of divide, divide in my identity, that I'm growing up as like an East Asian, and we have our different traditions at home, but in the outside world, we speak English, we eat predominantly like British food and things like that, and that was when I really started to understand what it meant, growing up as an ethnic minority in the UK. So yeah, and I guess that's when, like, during school time is when you get picked on for being different, and that was really, it was really young. I think it was like 6, 7, and I would bring in, like, my mum would prepare like food for me to bring in, which was more like Chinese, and I'd be taking the mick out of, and yeah, and I think because I was going to school every day and this was happening every day, it meant that I started associating a lot of negativity with my Chinese identity. And over time, that was really, looking back on it, it impacted me quite a lot, because I had associated like negativity with my Chinese identity, and I'd worked very hard to just naturally start pushing or detaching myself from that part of my identity. And I yeah, just looking back now, I think throughout high school as well, I was very out of touch with my Chinese identity, and it was only when I came to university where I met a much more diverse set of people, that I really started to understand, oh, this is what, like, my heritage, my family traditions, these are all like really important things to me, and trying to almost like reconnect with that side of me. So I guess that was a quick overview of my how my relationship with my Chinese identity changed as I grew up in the UK.
That's so interesting. And thank you so much for sharing that. And um, I really, that resonates with me such a lot. Whilst my story is quite different from yours in that I was adopted by British parents in Hong Kong. So both my parents, both white British. Mum's from the Wirral, dad's from London. My brother and I are both full Chinese, but we never
Yeah.
spoke Chinese. Moved to Yorkshire when we were 4 and 6 respectively, and essentially grew up in a very, very white school. And I, in fact, actually, when you say, you're picked on and bullied and things like this, I think it's really tough when you're growing up, as a child in these kind of environments. Whilst, there were times when, perhaps I definitely felt, the same, similarities to yourself. The times where I wished, I wish I was blonde, I wish I had blue eyes, I wish I looked like all of these other girls instead of being different. And you kind of, you then have this really weird, I don't know, you're quite confused. I mean, if it's not confusing enough growing up and going through all of those, stages of becoming an adult in inverted commas, but also being different, it's really, really tough. And your story there, I can completely relate to it, frankly. But clearly, as you then went through that phase and you then went to university, also like I did, actually you're into the wide open world. And actually, it's much, or at least for me, it was much easier in embracing being different. And clearly you've come out the other side. You've got so many fantastic accolades. You're up there doing your thing, championing, everything that you believe in, what you're good at. And I think that's just so admirable. And so talk to me after the young Martin has kind of, gone to school, thought about identity, being different, everything like that. What happened then after that? And how did you, then make it to, where you are now, as a successful businessman?
I think it was I think a big turning point for me was at university when I really understood what it felt like to be in a safe and inclusive environment. And it also coincided with the time when I really understood what it meant to be LGBT, because that it was almost a time for me to explore my gay identity, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if the environment wasn't as inclusive as it was. So it really highlighted the fact that you are impacted so heavily with the people that are around you, and also the that safety that people create, and taking that into the workplace. I think that was one of the very big things that I looked for, especially in like an employer when I was starting out looking for jobs. And I'm really glad that a lot of large organizations are taking this diversity and inclusion agenda very seriously, because it's something that has definitely it it works, and I've experienced this firsthand, and it does make such a huge impact on people from minority groups. um, and I guess from this, it's also taught me that difference is, I think, in the when when we're young, like, difference is almost like, as we were talking, a point where people can use it against you, to attack you, to put you down. But it was this diversity and inclusion agenda, and understanding this the importance of diversity and inclusion helped me understand that difference was actually one of my most powerful um, aspects. And so I think going into the workplace, I really had a sense of understanding that that I think it was, firstly, it was a passion of mine, but secondly, I felt that I had some sort of responsibility as well. Like, those people around me have taken it up upon themselves to make this a safe environment for me, and I felt almost like a responsibility to continue advocating for that and ensuring that that continues. And that's what a lot of what drives the diversity inclusion work that I do now, because I really think it's about helping the next generation and almost like striving together to a common goal.
I couldn't agree
Yeah,
more. And on that note, and I know we've covered a fair bit of this already, but I did have a couple of questions written down that I wanted to ask you. What does true diversity and inclusion mean to you? And for all of our listeners who are tuning in, and for companies that are thinking, like to look at how we can further our D&I policies and what have you, why is it important? And, what does true D&I mean to you?
I think true DNA to me is it's almost like it's a responsibility for everyone. I think there are a lot of people from minority groups, both you and I, that are championing this cause. But really, for us to achieve true equality, equal representation, we need everyone to be involved. And I do see it as like it doesn't have to be a 100% responsibility. I know some people choose to go into DNI as a job, but I do believe that everyone has some sort of responsibility to champion for a fair and more equal world, where people aren't defined by what color skin that they have or where they are born or things like that, and everyone has like equal opportunity, and if they work hard, then they are able to achieve what they set their mind to. So that I think that sums up what diversity and inclusion means to me.
Well, you summed it up perfectly. And I would like to kind of now ask, and I know that you're a real fan of kind of actually being able to emotionally connect with people and kind of show this vulnerability side, of yourself, and to encourage others to be able to do it. Can you kind of talk me through maybe a couple of key pieces that actually others might be able to embrace, and things that we can maybe take away, I guess, from this session, as maybe even action points. It'd be great if some of our listeners and a number of the execs who I'm sure are tuning in right now thought, right, do you know what, I'm going to go and make a difference, and I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to go back and try and kind of further emotionally connect with people and what have you.
Yeah, so I think you've already touched upon the first point, but I would say like emotionally connecting with people is really important. I think we've all been in a situation where someone is trying to lead a room, and they're just like, there's nothing behind the words that they're speaking, and it's very difficult to connect or follow someone that's not like that. It's very uninspiring. So I think emotionally connecting with people, and the way that you can really do that is by showing humility and also vulnerability. And a way that I really like to do that is by sharing parts of my story or sharing my emotions, my feelings. Like, as human beings, we experience a range of emotions, a range of feelings every day. And I don't think there's any problem sharing those with people, because we all feel them. And it's a really good way for people just to connect on like a very basic human level, that, yeah, these things are like, this makes me upset, or I find this quite tough, or like, this will be tough, guys, but we'll try and find ways to make it better for all of us. Like, it's trying to invigorate a sense of like humanity, I think, in what can be sometimes a very soulless or like place that is business, if you take it the wrong way.
You've really encompassed that so beautifully. I love the way you talk about it's quite philosophical, the way you speak about it almost. It's very much kind of, we are all humans. At the end of the day, we're all flesh and blood and we have all got beating hearts and souls. And so actually there's nothing wrong with scratching below the surface and kind of sharing some of those pieces. And you're completely right. It does, it allows you to feel that more deep emotional connection and understanding with fellow colleagues, fellow human beings, and such. And I think it really helps facilitate being able to lead with more force and purpose, because you rightly said, when you show a piece of yourself or when you share a piece of your story, actually people feel more comfortable with you, feel more comfortable that they can also do the same, and ultimately does really inspire better and more positive change. Just another couple of quick questions, because I'm so conscious that we've actually been speaking for kind of over 20 minutes already, which is incredible. And I could chat to you about this stuff, all day. And I want to catch you for a few minutes afterwards as well, because I have a proposition for you. But moving quickly on, just to a couple of other pieces, and we'll call this a lightning round, so we can go through some of them quite quickly. I know this is a rather large question to ask, but what to you, because I view you as a very successful individual and certainly as a millennial leader, you've done such a lot in your time. What to you is your secret, the secret Chinese sauce to success?
I think I've really come to accept like my difference and really fully embrace it. And I think understanding the power in that and the power of me telling my story from my own unique perspective, and really understanding and exploring some of the feelings and some of the experiences that I've had. I think the power of telling my story is really my secret to my success.
Excellent. And if there was any advice that you would give to your even kind of younger self growing up and everything like that, what advice would you impart? And if there's anyone who is, one of our listeners or many of our listeners who are out there thinking, oh goodness, I'm feeling a little bit lost or alone and what have you, what advice might you give to them and also your younger self if you were to do it all again?
So I think as children, we're impressionable and we're really worried about fitting in and being cool. But yeah, it links to my past point. It's about trying to realize as early as possible in your life that you should be confident who you are, no matter what your difference is. You should really embrace that and be very secure in yourself. I think with the rise of like social media and stuff like that, people are getting quite people don't have the same people have people don't have the same level of confidence that they have, because social media is such a cruel world out there, and so it's just trying to stay true to yourself and really really be confident in yourself, despite all the stuff that's going on around you, and really yeah, and being having faith in yourself. That's what I tell myself.
Excellent. And, I think that's really, really good advice. I think it's so important to be true to yourself, because it takes energy to not be true to yourself as well. I think you get your best self when you are your most authentic self. And finally, I guess, are there any specific kind of inspirations that you've had throughout your life? Any heroes or sheroes, as I like to call them, that have been particularly inspirational? Any books or podcasts that you've been listening to that you would like to share at all?
So yeah, I think like before we spoke about some of the role models or people that we saw when we were little, and like Gokwan was obviously um it was almost a role model in a sense, just because he looked like me and he was like on the screen, on the big screen. But there have been a lot of people, I think, around in my life who have inspired me in different ways. I take, for example, they're like focused on specific areas or specific parts of their personality traits, and I think that's the a great approach to have, that you can almost learn things from anyone. And so I have quite an open mind when it comes to meeting new people and understanding how different people behave and different people's approaches to life. I guess in terms of like my favorite podcasts or shows, like there's currently one at the moment which is called Fresh Off the Boat, which has been hugely successful in the US, and it's something that I've come across uh, now, and it follows the story of a Taiwanese American family who moved from Washington DC, the Chinatown, to Orlando, which is mainly a white neighborhood, and it really follows their day-to-day life of how like the child is trying to settle into school and the mum is trying to integrate with the other like housewives on the road, and the dad is trying to set up a business that's targeted to a predominantly white customer base. And I think that the interesting part about this show is that it's told from the perspective of the family, and that's a really rare thing for East Asians and Southeast Asians, because we're often for East and Southeast Asians, the actors are usually a sidekick, or they're like a random actor here playing there. You don't really get to feel their perspectives. They're usually used as like the weird funny neighbor or the nerdy guy at work. Whereas in the show, the characters are properly thought out, and you really understand their emotions, their feelings, and you can really understand what the East Asian like immigrant experience is like.
It's so true about the sidekick piece as well. It's like that kind of almost tokenism piece. I know I'm laughing, but it's totally true. I've written that down here, Fresh Off the Boat. So anyone who wants to have a listen to that podcast, it sounds fantastic. And I will message you and let you know how I get on with it. I'm conscious of our time today because I know that you need to get off to lots of other important meetings, Martin. So I'm going to summarize for all our listeners before I thank you very, very much indeed for being here. And say how people can contact you. I've certainly learned a lot from our chat today, and would love to have a chat with you off air as well when you have a moment. But some really critical pieces of learning from today's session. Least of all, the kind of the absolute power of difference. The ability to actually be confident and stay true to yourself and to your faith. And how you're feeling, and also to kind of really be quite, respectful, I think, of everyone, because actually, it's difficult if you don't come from a diverse or a minority community per se, to be able to look through the lens of another. So I think, again, Martin's raised some really, really valid points there. And finally, if there is anyone who's out there who maybe doesn't feel, as safe as they could, or would like someone to speak with, please do reach out. Please do get in touch with us. We're both very, very passionate about this cause. We would love to hear from you. I'm sure Martin would be more than happy to have, a chat as well about his inspirational story. Do reach out to him on LinkedIn. Or get in touch with me and I will put you in touch with Martin. I'm going to put everything into the show notes at the end of today's session. www.leilamckenzie.com/podcast. And thank you again very, very much, Martin, for being here with us. It's been really fantastic, you sharing your story.
Thank you very much for having me. It was lovely speaking to you too.
Thanks, Martin. My name is Leila McKenzie, and you have been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast, with you every fortnight and soon to be weekly. Please do tune in, and I will look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Thanks so much. Bye now. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.